We are here in the dyno room once again with Jimmy Mack. You guys be sure to go give him a follow. I'll be sure to throw his Instagram right there on the screen. So last time around, as per you guys letting me know in the comments section, we didn't take it up to redline, which is where it makes most of its power. So honest mistake on my part. You said in that video that you'd never run an Indian Scout before. So, you know, not expected to know obviously. So we're back. MMI was kind enough to allow us to be able to do this again, so greatly appreciate you guys. Thank you. So we're going to take it up to redline this time around and see what the horsepower and torque numbers are. And then as per the comments, you guys really wanted us to compare it to a 1200 Harley-Davidson Sportster. And so Jimmy has set us up with a, what is it?
So what we have for the 1200 is a bone stock 72. This bike has 0.3 miles on it. It has never been ridden. It has never been used as training aid here. It was a display in the hallway. We're gonna put it on and check it out. Literally stock mufflers, stock everything, like it's never been run. I got it running the other day and put a battery in it and it's been on charge, so it'll fire up and be happy. To compare a little bit more, I have a bike that we use in the dyno all the time. It is a stage 1 1200, so it's just mufflers, air filter, and a generic download for a stage 1 1200, and we can compare all three so you get an idea of what you got. We can show you the 883 and the 1200 versus the 1200 stock and the 1200 stage 1.
You guys be sure to check them out. I'll be sure to drop the link on the screen as well as down in the description below. And if y'all have any questions on any of it, be sure to comment, let us know. We're gonna go ahead and get this thing all set up, connected, and get some power numbers. Oh, I guess I should mention, we're giving this motorcycle away. Season 5 of what we call the Blockhead bike build. Basically, we take motorcycles and we're able to get them through Patreon because, you know, you patrons all come together and show the community a ton of support. And that allows us to be able to buy motorcycles, customize them out, and then whenever we're done creating content on those, we give them back to the community. So this is one of the bikes, Indian Scout. It is not the Scout 60. It is the larger engine with a 6-speed. Yeah, then we're also giving away a Harley-Davidson Iron 883. And then we also have a Yamaha Bolt that we're giving away. If you guys haven't seen the previous videos, be sure to go check them out. I'll drop the links and all that stuff to the series playlist in the description below. Stock exhaust on this bike, so no earmuffs needed or hearing protection needed.
This is where we're at on this particular motorcycle. We are redline at this 66-ish 6602. I'm gonna go over to zoom real quick and I'll just kind of show you what's happening over in this area here. That first run, I stayed in the throttle and let it just bang off the rev limiter. Now it's not an audible bang, 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 bang sound like you might be used to. And you can see how it's making these little loops. Yeah, man, that's the limit. That's pulling timing or something out of there. There's different ways to limit RPM, but it's definitely stopping the RPM right there, and it's consistent as it can be. You can see on the blue and the red almost match each other perfectly. That's the limit, guys. 6th gear, does it tell you what speed we're hitting? We can change it to look at the speed. I mean it could be a speed tire.
Yeah, maybe like the governor or something.
Sure, it definitely could be. So we can put it in a different gear. If we can get to a higher RPM, that might be the way to go. So
So number wise with this, we're looking at 73.82 as the horsepower. With the engine RPM, it's 6,600-ish. And then the torque is
66.8 torque. Yep, and that's peak torque's out here and this towards the end. I just switched this to speed across the bottom so we can see. Maybe I can blow this up a little better. And you can see that it's at 120, just before 120 mile per hour, or at 6,600 RPM, this is kicking.
So I'd assume that's probably the governor kicking on at 120.
If it's the governor coming in at 120 and stopping the RPM, that kills the potential power output. So let's do this. Let's run it in 5th gear. We won't get the tire speed in 5th gear. We won't have the most accurate number in 5th gear as far as power output, but it might let us rev out higher. And if we could rev, if this thing would rev up another, you know, 1,500, 2,000 RPM, it could get really close to that 80, if not right at it. Looks like, anyway.
If we're doing, what did we say the RPMs were hitting at?
They're like 6,600.
Yeah, so we should have another 1,200 RPM as per the internet. And the internet's never wrong, so looking at it, it looks like we're hitting the speed limiter at this point. And the reason he's running it in 6th gear is because of the how did you explain that?
So the reason why we're in the gear we're in is because this is where we're going to be the most accurate. What we're dealing with is a dyno drum ratio by tire speed versus engine speed. So I'm looking for engine speed to be around 57, 56 to 1, and a drum revolution to be 1 drum revolution. So 56 engine revolutions to 1 drum revolution is what we're looking at to get an accurate measurement. If I had 60 to 1, then I'll have less numbers here. If I have 47 to 1, they'll be slightly higher. And that's been a trick that dyno guys have done over the years, unfortunately. Like, everybody's not honest. And you'll get guys that run the bike in, say, 4th gear, and then they print that one graph in 4th gear. And then they turn around and run the bike in 5th gear, which changes the ratio, and it's like 4% higher. And then they print that one all by itself. And they say, hey, look what I did for you. I got you 4 more horsepower or whatever. And they convince you that your bike's running faster, when in reality they were just using different gears and manipulating the dyno some. It's really bad to do. It gives dyno operators a horrible name. So I always like to show everything on the same graph. We're also looking at SAE corrected horsepower and torque. SAE is the Society of Automotive Engineers. That's what we use here in the United States. That means that we're correcting this output to a standard air day. So for example, SAE is correcting to 77 degrees Fahrenheit at 29.23 inches of mercury. It's also saying that we're 85% mechanically efficient and that we are sitting somewhere on a relatively dry day. Okay, not a lot of water grains. The SAE is another form that they would use to mess that up. If you change the correction factor, DIN, which would be like for Germany, or STD, if you change this around, it changes the numbers. So then you get these magic numbers. We stick with SAE in the States. If somebody has something different in here, I mean, a race bike, okay. If you have STD on a race bike, great, good for you. You're hunting these big numbers. The smoothing, we typically leave that on 3. Smoothing on 3 it's just smooth enough to where, you know, it doesn't look too bad, but it's just sensitive enough to show anomalies where there will be some problems. Today we've got it on 5, so it's the smoothest, prettiest graph that we can get. And you can still see there's a little bit of shaking and bouncing around in there. That's kind of normal, you know, tires and whatever. But these 2 runs, you can definitely see it looks like it's doing something here, and then it changes and flattens out. It kind of liked whatever was going on in this end over here a little bit. See that? Going, and then there's like collectively going, and then suddenly there's a change, and then it recovers. Looks like that whole thing could pop up a little bit. I don't know what's causing that. We could pull an air fuel line on the bike. That's a lot of work. I'm not sure I can get that into that stock muffler. If we had an air fuel problem, I was reading on there that you guys like some of the tech stuff. So if I had an air fuel problem, we're typically looking for an air fuel line that's relatively flat. All right, now I don't have one here because I'm not measuring air fuel, but if I had a line that was pretty much straight through here, that would say that my fueling is under control. Whether that's the best spot or not, I don't know. That's not how it works. But if it's pretty much flat, I should be good to go. All right, if I had an air fuel line that was flat here, and then right here at the same time where this changes, if the air fuel line suddenly dipped down a little bit and then kind of tried to recover, then the air fuel line would kind of match the torque line there, And that would let me know that whatever's going on in that fuel right there is what's causing this. So you could come through here, go to that spot and pick that air fuel line up by taking fuel away. And that would, in theory, pick this up and give you a curve that stays above that line going across there instead of that little dip there. Some of the ways we use air fuel ratios to figure out whether the tune is proper. And we also do that with exhaust systems and stuff too. So still a good looking run, guys. Maybe we were all mistaken because of that tire speed. Maybe that's why we're cutting out because of a tire limit. Like I said, I don't know enough about this product to be able to know that for sure, but we have a dyno, so let's test it.
On that note, there was a couple people that basically said that we were trying to make Harley-Davidson look better, like the Iron, and that is not the case at all here. We are totally impartial. MMI, I mean, you guys teach all sorts of different bikes and brands and manufacturers and all that stuff. Indian, I don't believe is one of them, right?
No, we don't teach Indian, but I would totally teach Indian if Indian wanted to get involved at the school. I really don't care. Anything I can get on that has a throttle is fun. I ride anything. I'll ride whatever. I've got a Yamaha four-wheeler too. I've got a Yamaha Warrior at the house. I've got a John Deere side-by-side Gator, you know, and it's got a Kawasaki motor in it. I've got a Honda outboard. I've got a Yamaha outboard. I've got Honda generator. Dude, I don't care what it is. So I have Cummins and Power Stroke product at my house. Like I have a Jeep with a Chevy driveline in it. Like I'm all about mixing it up. So if I come across that way, I just know the product better because I'm more familiar with that product.
So we're totally impartial here. We're not trying to skew numbers or anything like that. I think in the comments section, I told you guys to remove your tinfoil hats because that is not what we're doing here at all. We are totally trying to be 100% transparent. The last time around, we did basically hit that speed limiter. Would you be down to run it in a different gear so we can actually hit rev limiter so that we can kind of show that as well?
Yeah, if the tire speed is what's limiting this bike on these power numbers, we're gonna run it in 5th gear. Although it'll be slightly lower on power, which I can show you what happened because we'll be in the wrong ratio. At least we'll get the right RPM. And I would like to see what happens, man. This bike is a rad bike. I told you guys before, if you have an 883, you run across one of these.
I was riding it yesterday. I was trying to hit the limiter and I think I was probably 4th or 5th gear, and there was a white truck way ahead in the distance, and I'm like, I should hit the rev limiter before I reach that truck because it's way far up there, and I did not hit the rev limiter, and I had to swerve over, you know, and pass him, and I was like, oh my god, like this bike, it rips. It's a fun bike to ride. It's very peppy and predictable power band too, you know, so it's like I'm a big fan of it. I'm really stoked to kind of get into it and start modding it, and then for us to tune it up to see, you know, kind of what it can become even more too. So
let's try this in 5th gear. Well, we made it past the rev limit that we had earlier.
Yeah.
Right, so that was definitely a tire speed thing, but it still only went to 72.
that's in 5th gear.
That's in 5th gear. Yeah.
So we're still hitting 120 top of 5th gear.
Well, yeah, so let's see if that's what's happening because we're at 7,200 as far as it wanted to go. I'll get rid of the engine RPM. We'll switch that over to tire speed. And yeah, man, it's hitting 120 in 5th gear, but do you see the power change all the way through? If you look at this, you can see that it looks like the green and the yellow. That's the one the cursor is on for you guys that are colorblind. This kid right here, this is your horsepower line versus how it was in 6th gear. This is 5th gear horsepower line. Look how much higher it is. And it goes all the way to the top and it shows a better run. And that's got to do with gear ratio. The gear ratio messes you up. Let's get rid of this and see how we got 2 different gear ratios here. This one is you know, it's a little more, it shows a little more power versus this one here that shows a little less power based off being in 2 different gears. Either way, we both hit the tire speed on both of them. So we're gonna run it in 4th gear and see if we can eliminate that 120 limit.
So with that run, with that new gear ratio. We're looking at max power of 77.4, 61.62, and we still haven't hit the rev limiter. We've hit the speed limiter, but we are not hitting rev limiter, and that's what people want to see for some reason. So
it's all about that elusive number.
It makes more in like the next 20% or the top end of the...
So in third gear, my bike makes 80, but in fourth and fifth and sixth gear, it only makes 70. It's actually good. I mean, I'm learning about the product, and that's awesome, because, you know, at this level of the game, man, if I'm not learning new stuff all the time, I'm bored. And we all learn all the time and never stop. And that's the coolest part about this job. It's the coolest part about life in general. We're always learning. I
recently joined Jimmy Mack at a drag event, which I took video on and will release, and he's got like a top fuel, like 1,000 horsepower drag bike, which is just it's a monster. One of the things he said was that, like, here he's a master of his craft, but there he's brand new. He's like, you know, what'd you say, a grasshopper?
Yeah, I'm just a grasshopper. Here I'm the master, and there I'm a grasshopper.
Yeah.
It's the coolest thing to experience that, you know. Oh, back to not knowing what I'm doing again. It's awesome.
So that's one of the things I like to focus on with the channel, is taking you guys through the process and viewing the industry through kind of the lens here and learning about this as we go. So I just want to continue to spread that knowledge, and for us to have fun along the way with it. And so I think it's awesome.
We're also got to keep in mind that every year new product hits, and every time we have new product, we're all newbies, right? And even though we might be pros in the field or know what we're talking about, when 2021 hits, might be a whole nother product out there, and then, you know, now you're going, oh well, again, same thing. I don't know where I'm at, I don't know what I'm doing. We've got to be creative. If I have a service manual, I'm digging into it, learning about the product, and I try to get some formal education on it as quick as possible, because without the formal education, you make mistakes, and that costs money. The attempt is to not make mistakes, and if you're working on other people's stuff, it's critical not to make mistakes.
Yeah. Usually they appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, guys, so we're gonna do a fourth gear run now.
Fourth gear this time.
And we're trying to hit that rev limiter.
So this is looking like spaghetti. Well, 5, 6, and 9 are the rock stars there. That one actually hit 80 almost, or right at 80. I still hit 120, fourth gear. But it is flatlining right there. I don't see it going any higher at that point, but we can try it in third. But it's funny how they all climb. See how the power numbers are jumping?
It's because of the ratio.
Yeah, so this is 6th gear, there's 5th gear, and then you can see 4th gear. It's like, wow, that's really up there in 4th gear. They should kind of lay over each other, but when you change gears, they jump out. I wonder if a tuner would get rid of that speed limit issue. Yeah, because we're still hitting in the same spot. We're gonna have to do it in third to get to
actually hit.
I think so, yeah. Still that's sitting at 80.
So the max power run we got on that one is 79.35 and a max torque of 60.14. And that is a 4th gear pull, but we're hitting the speed limiter and not the rev limiter still. So we've got to do a 3rd gear run.
Yep, we're gonna do a 3rd gear run and see this is awesome.
Right.
This bike boogies.
That's wild. It's crazy. You're sitting there just holding throttle. It's like when I was riding it and I was trying to hit rev limiter, and it just doesn't happen because you're hauling ass by the time you're like wanting it to hit, and it just doesn't hit. Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense.
It's a fun bike.
All right, guys, 3rd gear run. On the quest to hit the rev limiter. Definitely hit rev limiter that time.
Yeah, sitting right at 8,000. It kind of looks like it's got either the governor stopping the bike whenever we're playing with it, or it's got some kind of a multi-gear rev limit, but it's definitely hitting at the exact same spot. So let me show you a comparison from fourth gear versus third gear. The red run that the cursor's touching, that one is third gear, and the blue run is fourth gear. And it looks like they are pretty much laid on top of each other. We're gonna switch this to speed so we can see if we hit the same spot. But yeah, so we were definitely hitting the rev limiter here in third, right? And it was third gear hits 8,000 at about, I don't know, 102, 103, somewhere in that ballpark.
So the power numbers for this one, for the run in third gear, hitting rev limiter, we're looking at 80. So it's like at 79.99. So we'll call that 80, with a torque value of 59.11. We're seeing the max horsepower at 96.37 miles per hour, the max torque at 68.33 miles per hour.
Now what's goofy is that we only changed gears, and it looks like it's making more power right here than it did in the other gear. That all has to do with gear ratio being incorrect. That's why this tower is a taller tower than this other tower. They just don't match up. Basically this one is shifted that way, basically like this line is moved to the left, and they're just not accurate when they do that. We're just in the wrong gear. We'll simplify this even more by getting rid of the torque line, which is this line right here in the middle. If I lose this torque line power over there for the second, you can see that these lines don't match up, right? With speed shifts them all over. We get rid of the speed because this run was running out and it stopped short. Then the next run took off and stopped short. But like, it wasn't making more power here. This thing didn't make 60 horsepower on this one, and this one at the 50 horsepower at the same RPMs. You know what I mean? They get a little goofy that way. Let's look at gear ratio. So this one's close to 70. This one's close to 80, a little over 80. The gear ratios are pretty wild.
So in the beginning, you showed us having the correct rotation of the drums for the gearing. That matters in terms of reading accurate horsepower and torque, correct?
That's right. According to DynoJet, right, the guys that make this thing, they say that our gear ratio from engine speed to drum speed, that's this line, all these horizontal lines, that one, that these lines should be as close to 56:1 as possible. 56, 57 ballpark, right? You try to use the gear that keeps you right there and you'll get the most accurate number. And then as you change gears on a high RPM bike, you know, it might be the lower ratio or the higher numeric ratio. And on a lower RPM bike with higher drum speed, you know, it might change. So the idea is that you're not supposed to use this one or this one. You're not supposed to use this one way up here, which is, you can see that this has a, you know, showing the most power. We got the biggest power out of this lower gear on this particular one, which would be opposite on a Harley. You would see the biggest number with the lower the gear ratio was down here. We need to be, our attempt is to be as close to this. That's why on the other video I ran through an all gear run. I just did like 4th, 5th, and 6th gear on this bike, and then said, all right, well, there's that one, and the one I want is this kid right here. And it's kind of hard to read, but I think that says 56, 56.08, 6108, 6936, and this one's 8224. So kind of skews the power numbers slightly. The dyno is just this big calculator. The way the drum spins around, right, it calculates how much time it takes to spin it, and then on the next revolution it takes less time to do that, and with that they figure out a rate of acceleration. They have a known rate of acceleration with the drum per revolution, like every other revolution, and then they have a RPM that we're picking up so we can calculate torque, and that's how we figure out power. It's doing this, it's a big complex formula, and it's doing it like lightning speed, and then graphing the number for you, and it's putting so many dots down that they run into each other and just make one big answer. You compared it to a torque wrench earlier, like it has to be calibrated. Right, yeah, that's a good point. So we're trying to calibrate this baby, and by us keeping the numbers of engine revolution to drum revolution at as close to 56 engine revolutions to each drum revolution, we are calibrated to get the most accurate data, versus if I'm just, you know, picking any gear I want, then the numbers are going to be either optimistic, like bigger, right, or they're going to be, you know, a little conservative, you know, meaning that they're a little lower. You have to calibrate torque wrenches from time to time. Just because you set it to 100 inch-pounds doesn't mean it's 100 inch-pounds every time. Sometimes you turn it and you drop it, you leave them turned up all the way, and they lose their accuracy. Same thing with you know, your weapons. You drop your gun a couple times and the sights get off. You know, your scope can lose its zero, and you have to go double check and get it re-zeroed. At least that's the excuse I use all the time to go shooting. But you know, that's the same thing, man. You know, we just have to be calibrated, and we're trying to be as accurate as possible when we make these measurements. And you know, as you can see, I can still manipulate these numbers. We can put 100 pounds in the back tire of this bike. For the record, I have all of these bikes set at 40 pounds. 40 psi in the back tire on this dyno gives me the maximum traction with the minimum tire deflection. And anytime that tire is deflected, right, it's hard to move. So if it's moving, it's hard to turn. If you ever pushed a bike with flat tires, it's hard to move it, right? And I can usually tell if the bike needs air just when I pick it up off the side stand. The bikes I mess with all the time, when you pick them up, they should feel about that hard. And if they're harder to pick up, I know that there's no air in the tires. And that's our #1 service related item that's missed by all of you guys. We never air our tires. Like, it'll get aired up once and then you won't ever check it until you have a problem. If you do check it more than once a week, or at least once a week, good for you. If I put too much air in this thing, then I will get, these numbers will pump up a couple, right? So if I put, you know, a dangerous amount of air in there, I won't even give you a number, but if I inflated that thing way beyond what it should be, I will get bigger numbers on this dyno. If I switch the oil out and put a dangerously thin oil for the engine, I would get more power out of it. So there's a lot of ways to manipulate that stuff. Like I said before about switching gears, dyno operators will print one run that's a low run and then print another run that's a high run and say, hey, look, we went from 74 to 80 and I picked you up 6 horsepower by switching gears. It'd be kind of hard to sell that. Let's look at overall. Let's see if we can get overall, because we definitely hit the rev limiter right there. And come over here and we're going to select torque on the right. We're going to get rid of speed. That's another thing. Anytime you're looking at torque, make sure it's got torque on the right axis. Make sure it has engine RPM on the bottom axis. A lot of people leave speed on the bottom for a bunch of different reasons, but that's just what they do. All right, so here's what happened to us. This is the first video, or was it maybe the second video when we tested this one. We came to here and it died out because that's 120 miles an hour in 6th gear. So it limited with a governor. Due to tire speed, it limited our RPM. We didn't investigate any farther to find out if that was a governor or a rev limiter. Like I said, I wasn't familiar with this bike and I assumed that that was the rev limit at 6,500. That's a lot of the rev limiters for our air-cooled Harleys are right in that ballpark. Internet made us come back and double check this thing, and you guys were right about your product. Some of you knew exactly what you were talking about and said, hey man, this thing goes all the way to 8,000 RPMs. You were absolutely right. It does go to 8,000. And we found out that when we went into the next gear, lower to 5th gear, it still didn't make it to 8,000. It made it to 7,200, and that was our 120 mile an hour mark. And then when we got into 4th gear, it pretty much hit the rev limit and the mile per hour mark at the same time. And then we ran it in 3rd gear, which was the red run right there, and it actually hit the rev limit of 80. It's like literally 8,100 or 8,200 maybe, right in that ballpark. It hit that spot only at about 104 miles an hour, 103 miles an hour. Kudos to you guys for sending us back in here. We're glad to do it, find out what's up. You know, it's unfortunate that without a tuner that you can't get any faster, but tire speed rating is a big deal. It's pretty serious. I don't know many manufacturers that would want their bikes to go faster than what the tire rating is just for legal purposes, so that might be why it's like that. If I told you guys with Harleys to be wary of this bike in stock form, I'm really giving you a warning this time. Because 80 horsepower is a ton of fun, man. When I was growing up, if you had an 80 horsepower Harley, the 80 horsepower, 80 foot-pounds of torque, you pretty much had the fastest bike in town. And then it went to 100 and 100 horsepower, 100 foot-pounds. If you had a 100 bike, you were ripping wheelies in 3rd gear, just having a great time, rolling burnouts as far as you could stick it. And now the common today is, I guess, in the 120s, 130s. It's just kind of outrageous today, which is cool. Yeah, it's really cool. I like the hell of it.
I need to bring my 131 so you can play with it.
So I don't know how much you guys mess with auto-tune stuff or how much you hear about auto-tune. Just to kind of summarize that. So an auto-tune doesn't automatically find the best spot to put your bike. An auto-tune will follow this little line I make. So I'll say, I want my air fuel here, and it'll put it there. It automatically goes where you tell it to go. But if the weather's cooler or hotter or whatever, it's gonna change to make that air fuel ratio exactly what you told it to, but you're still telling it where to be. It's auto tuning to where you requested. So I like to call it an auto maintainer. It maintains what you asked for, but it doesn't know if what you asked for is the best for your bike. You still need a tuner. You still need somebody that can look at the graph, manipulate the place to be, to find where the bike likes it the most, and then say, okay, now maintain that tune, please. And then it will maintain that tune. So it's not a bad thing, they're an awesome thing. They still need a tuner. They also need the public to be educated that it doesn't automatically fix the whole thing, okay? That if there's a number that's targeted in there that's a safe number, it will automatically tune to that targeted safe number. But safe number doesn't necessarily mean the best for your bike.
That's valuable information for those of you out there looking at tuner options, and that is one of the reasons why, and I'll probably throw this little segment talking about the tuner into another video on the 131 that we're building out, and like that's valuable info. That's one of the biggest reasons we're switching over to Power Vision, which is made by Dynojet, which is who makes this room and this whole setup versus just having like an auto tuner system. So we're really getting to dial it in. But yeah, that's awesome info. Based on that, I'm thinking that this will probably be its own video, but as per request from you guys, we do have a Harley-Davidson 72 out there, which we're going to run to get some dyno numbers, and that is a 1200. So we'll be able to compare those numbers that y'all requested to the Indian Scout. And also, just to clarify, this is not a Scout 60. I think I said that earlier, but just to kind of reiterate, not a Scout 60, it's a normal Scout. It has a larger engine and 6 gears. So a lot of y'all wanted that comparison. And then we've got a stage 1 1200 Sportster to compare to as well. But those are the findings. I mean, I think that was incredibly valuable, being able to go through and once again, constantly learning. Really appreciate all your knowledge, sir. You guys be sure to go give Jimmy Mack a follow on Instagram. He does some just crazy stuff with motorcycles, so y'all be sure to go follow him on Instagram. I'll drop his screen name on the screen, and or his Instagram on the screen, as well as down in the description below.
If I had some recommendations and you own this motorcycle or you're thinking about buying this motorcycle, I think it's a good buy. I think this is a hell of a platform to play on and expand on. Just make sure your mirrors are tight.
Yes. So we are going to be getting a full stage 1 from Revzilla. Big thanks to them. And then once again, we're giving away the bike. So if you guys are interested in possibly winning it, check out the link down in the description below. Join Patreon, patreon.com/blockheadmoto. And yeah, at the end of the season 5, we're giving away this Indian Scout, which we're going to do as a bobber, like a true bobber, not what Indian calls a bobber. And then we're also going to give away a Harley-Davidson Iron 883, which we're gonna probably big bore, and that's kind of drag style, lower drag bar. And then we've got a Yamaha Bolt, which we're gonna be modding out as well, probably stage 1 that, see what kind of numbers we can get. We're gonna throw tuners on all of them. So we're gonna be spending a good amount of time, I would assume, with Jimmy here. So y'all get to know him. He's gonna become a familiar face. But thanks again, as always, man, I really appreciate it. And big thanks to MMI. Y'all be sure to check them out. Like I said, I'll drop the link to them down in the description below if you guys are interested in learning about all this stuff in a classroom environment. This is something that they offer. There's 2 campuses in the US, one here in Orlando, Florida, and then the other is in Phoenix, Arizona. Phoenix, Arizona. So y'all be sure to check out their website for more information. And if you have any questions on the school or anything like that, be sure to post up down in the comments below. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope it was insightful. If you did enjoy it, be sure to hit that like button for me. Hitting that like button helps out the channel quite a bit. If you guys aren't subscribed, you want more content like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that bell icon so it sends you notifications of future uploads and activity. Until next time, ride safe out there, stay vigilant, and we'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.